everyone. Welcome to our Spring into Retirement 2025. We're excited to have you join us today and take a fresh look at retirement planning as a whole. I'm Anastasia Manus. I'll be your moderator today. I'm the marketing specialist here at Malecki Financial Group, and I'll have our advisors introduce themselves in just a second. You guys want to go ahead?
Sure. Hey, everybody. Welcome to today's segment. And I'm Stan Malecki. I'm the owner here at Malecki Financial Group. I specialize in exit planning and income strategies for our clients.
How's it going, everyone? Name's Eric Stiles. I help my clients, retire early with our exclusive retirement income strategies.
Great, perfect. So what we're actually going over today is going to be spring cleaning your finances, evaluating your retirement readiness as a whole, some smart tax strategies that you might not know about, longevity planning, making sure that your wealth lasts all the way through, advanced time segmentation, new expenses in retirement, and just a quick note before we dive in, there should be a Q&A box to the bottom. If you can't see it, that's okay. We will find a way to get your questions as time goes on, but we're going to get started.
All right. So when we go through this today, retirement planning is not just about the numbers. It really isn't. It's, you want to make sure your finances align with your long-term goals, of course. And so as we go through today's presentation, ask yourself, am I on track? Am I too aggressive in my investing? Am I too conservative? These are real issues that could be problematic one side or the other. Have my financial goals changed at all over the years? What's really next for me? These are some of the things we're going to look at. And they're great questions you want to make sure that you have in alignment before it's too late. So a lot of people, when we talk about protecting your legacy and things of that nature, you want to make sure of a few things when you meet with an advisor. And some of the things we do here at our group is we want to make sure that we do beneficiary reviews constantly. As Eric knows, we do this all the time. And you want to look for getting your estate in alignment, making sure your insurance policies, variable annuity policies and contracts, you want to make sure they're aligned and in what your wishes are if you pass on, for your estate planning. So make sure, have you checked your beneficiaries lately? We have seen people that came into our office that are new clients that have had errors where it was people that they did not want that wish, on their wish list for inheriting assets. Make sure that your estate plan reflects your current wishes. And things of that nature. You do not want any headaches, and it really makes sense to take the time, review beneficiaries on all your investments and all your policies and things of that nature.
I know this isn't quite on there, but just in case somebody's not familiar, what is a beneficiary?
Yeah, so beneficiary is definitely, it's people that you leave money to or your legacy along to folks that are named in specific assets that you actually have acquired throughout your lifetime.
And to kind of add one thing in there, it also can be non-natural people as well. It could be trusts. It could be a charity you care a lot about that you want to make sure you want to leave some assets to. It's, it can be very specific to your wishes.
Exactly.
Awesome. So what about those tax strategies we talked about?
Yeah, so I mean, one thing we're going to talk about some few tax strategies to consider. It's not all of these are perfect for everyone. You have to examine it based on your own unique situation. But here's some few that I think everyone should consider. The first being Roth conversions. So this is the act of taking your pre-tax retirement assets, whether it be in a 401k, a traditional IRA, and converting it into a Roth asset. So a pre-tax investment asset, whenever you contribute to those assets, you're able to deduct it off your taxes, write it off, and then it grows tax deferred. And then come retirement, you're going to pay income taxes on everything you take out. The Roth kind of flips it. On the Roth end, generally, when you contribute to a Roth, you are contributing in a non-tax deductible manner. It then grows tax deferred. But then in retirement, you should, in theory, be able to take it out and use it tax-free. So, Roth 401ks are only became, a little bit more popular, recently. So for a lot of people that are in retirement or nearing retirement these days, they weren't really always exposed to be able to do a Roth 401k. They can only do the pre-tax traditional 401k. So an option of what you can do, it's not perfect for everyone, you have to examine the exact situation, is you could convert your pre-tax 401k, pre-tax traditional IRA into a Roth portion. Now, doing so though, you are going to get hit with a very large tax bill, and it is something that is, it's not perfect for everyone, but it is something I think you should examine in your specific financial plan. Another strategy is, invest in a tax efficient manner. There's a lot of different variables of how you can do this. One being you try to use more passive exchange traded funds instead of mutual funds. Generally, the reason is just exchange traded funds generally have less taxable events than mutual funds. Another option is using municipal bonds instead of taxable bonds to try to get the interest from these investments to be more tax efficient. And of course, once you start to get in retirement, and you start taking withdrawals, or maybe you need money for I don't know, a new house or new car or something like that. You need to take it out of your investments. Just always be cognizant of when you are trading and making transactions that are we trading it or in the most tax efficient manner. And then lastly, tax loss harvesting is the act of trying to make your individual stock portfolio as tax efficient as possible. You generally do need to have a portfolio that's made up of individual stocks to make it, this strategy worthwhile. But it is something to consider to increase your tax efficiency on the investment side. And then lastly, once you do get in retirement, and you do have your various sources of income you're living off of, you can coordinate in a way that maybe, you have a pension, you have a Roth IRA, and then you have a taxable brokerage account that you've, had for years. Potentially you could set up that you push that taxable assets more towards a long-term growth bucket, and you don't generally try to touch it as much as the others. So there are ways you can optimize in retirement how your assets are generating your income coming from a more tax efficient manner.
Now, there might be specific changes as you go through the seasons into retirement. So we're going to touch on a couple different things here.
So yeah, like I talked about at the beginning, I really enjoy liking to help people retire early, so that they can live, as long of retirement as possible and enjoy life and get past the working years and just, focus on doing exactly what they want to do, from 9 to 5 instead of being at the office 9 to 5. And so a few ways that you can work towards retiring early, of course, is saving as much as you can. The general rule of thumb is to try to save 15% of your gross income for retirement. Now, that's not perfect for everyone because maybe there's some people that got a little late to the savings game and they need to make up ground. So maybe they need to do more than 15%. Maybe there's some people that started second they started working in, coming out of high school, and maybe they don't need to do a full 15% at this point. But 15% is usually it's a good ballpark to consider. And another way to maximize your savings, of course, is to try to really cut back on your expenses. The more you cut back on your expenses, that's more money that you can then use to save for your early retirement. And so, of course, with all these savings, everything you're putting away, whether it's in a brokerage account, it's in your 401k, or it's in an IRA, if you should invest based on your own time horizon. But if your time horizon for retirement is, far away, you want to make sure you are invested in more growth oriented investments so that your money that you've worked hard for to put to the side can then start working for you as well. And another part of retiring early is to try to add different, streams of income. So whether that be, starting a side hustle that you do in your free time to kind of make a little bit of extra money to kind of, stash away, or it could be investing in real estate that can try to generate some passive rental income. So those are a couple to consider as well. And one big thing, really big thing that not a lot of people account for retiring early is that if you retire early, you are going to have to bridge the gap of paying for private healthcare until you get to 65 for Medicare. And so you got to make sure you account that in your strategy and account that in your plan for those higher expenses if you're going to be retiring before early and before 65. Then of course, want to make sure if you are further away from retirement, we talked about, tax efficient, strategies to set up, maybe targeting, trying to use your Roth 401k more, targeting, try to do, Roth IRAs on the side if your income allows it, if your income is in the limit. So those are some things to consider if you're trying to focus on retiring early.
I mean, if you retire early, you're going to be retired for hopefully a long time. What about longevity then?
Yeah, so I mean, whether you retire early or retire at, 65, 67, what a lot of people try to target. Today with modern health and, people are living in retirement for 30 plus years very commonly. And so that's more years that we need to plan for your income to last. You have to make sure you're ready for generally as you get older and you're in retirement, you're going to be going to the doctor more. You're going to run into more health concerns. You have to be ready for that higher healthcare expense of what you did before retirement generally. You have to be ready for inflation. I mean, you were impacted by inflation before retirement, but generally before retirement, your income, should be for the most part going up with inflation too. So maybe you don't feel it as much, but once you're in retirement, you do not have a paycheck anymore. You need to make sure that, your assets are ready to handle the rising costs of your living expenses being impacted by inflation. And a big way that we do that is you have to have a strategy in retirement. You should not be investing the same way you did before retirement after retirement. You should be having a retirement income strategy that is built to last, which is Stan's going to talk about on the next slide. It's something that we use that we call advanced time segmentation.
Yeah, so Eric, really, you just covered a lot of great ideas, and a lot of that has to do with, like Eric just talked about, accumulating assets through your lifetime. But now we're switching to what we kind of call the distribution phase of now taking income from the investments that you've saved over the years. And here at Malecki Financial Group, we have an exclusive through Cetera, our firm. It's a strategy called Advanced Time Segmentation. And what it does is it allows us to mathematically, we use software for this, it divides your assets accordingly into different time-based buckets to help ensure stable income while we try to help mitigate risk as well. One of the other things too it actually helps do is fight against inflation. So cost of living today is going to be much different 5 years, 10 years out. Of course, cost of living continues to increase. So you have to make sure that your income stream and your base, your principal that you're taking that money from, will be able to keep up with that. So through our strategy, a lot of times we refer to it as different buckets. We're looking at income now, income in the future that we allocate, and then also long-term growth as how we kind of segment out this accordingly through mathematical equations through the software. And so, we'll discuss a little bit about that approach and things of that nature, but that's really the big focus. It's very different. It's an income solution alone. And it's something that is very consistent and it tries to help, provide that dependable, stable type income.
All right, perfect. So, some new expenses or expenses you're aware of that, come up in retirement, you need to spend some time thinking about. Well, I already kind of shared about healthcare costs, but that definitely is one. I mean, just, as you get older, I'm sure, those of you that are in retirement notice this, or, those of you that have parents or grandparents that are in retirement notice this, you run into more health issues. And so you're going to have to plan for that and also plan for the potential of beyond just going to doctor more, the need for long-term care, and maybe whether it's an in-home or in a care facility, it is something that a lot of majority of people have to factor in, and so everyone should think of that as well. So take it 180 to more of a fun thing. You got to plan for your travel and for your leisure. You've been working 9 to 5 or maybe longer or shorter. You now have all this time, back to you now. How are you going to do it? You're going to go travel the world. You're going to go golf every day, go hunt and fish every day. You're going to go travel and spend time with your family. Maybe they're all in the same place and, maybe they're spread across the country. And for a lot of people in retirement, those first several years is really when a lot of that leisure and travel really starts, and eventually as you get older, to kind of slow down. So you have to plan for that, plan for additional trips, plan for more fun things, which is exciting. It's that's something, fun to plan for as well. I mean, I talked about inflation as well, recently, but it's not a new expense. I mean, inflation is something you've been dealing with already. It's just going to hit you and feel a little bit newer because you don't have a paycheck anymore that is hopefully keeping up with inflation. And then lastly, something new to consider in retirement, is how would you, if you do it all, how would you like and plan to support your children, grandchildren? Is there any, charitable causes that are very important to you that you want to make sure you help as well? For a lot of people in retirement, we find that we're setting up 529 college savings plans for them because they want to make sure that their grandchildren have that ready to go. With today's world, it's kind of hard to have a successful career without a college degree. And so, getting them, making sure they have a step ahead. So those are all things you have to consider. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're just like, you know what? I worked very hard for this. I want to put all my money to travel and leisure. That's fine. It's just something you got to think about. Is starting a legacy for you, is that important? If it is, you have to factor that into your plan.
Exactly.
So before we start to wrap up, just as kind of a reminder, this is a spring into retirement, kind of what you need as an overview before you take that next step. So here's a quick few things that you should keep in mind. We did already go over, but just in case you want to grab a picture of just one slide, review your investments. Do they align with your specific risk tolerance and goals? Update your beneficiaries in case they're not who's currently present for your everyday. Optimize taxes. Are you minimizing your tax burdens wherever possible? And reassess your budget because things might change a little bit. We would love to help you take the next step, so please reach out to the office to schedule your spring checkup, and especially if you're interested in ATS, as we mentioned before. The only way to know if it's a right fit for you is to go over it with your advisor. So going forward, we want to open it up for questions, and we can talk a little bit more about ATS specifically. But if you have anything, there should be a Q&A box. I did check, it is there. And drop anything in there, and we will do our best to answer your questions. In the meantime, Stan or Eric, can you tell us a little bit more about what ATS might actually look like while you're retired?
I can take this, Stan. So Stan kind of touched on it. We generally, to keep it straightforward, we like to separate our clients' retirement assets into 3 buckets: income now, income later, and long-term growth. So what we kind of do, and as you go up that bucket ladder, we will put more and more stocks and get more aggressive with it. But like in the income now bucket, it's generally primarily only fixed income, safer assets, especially in a year like this. If you started retirement now, the majority of your income is coming from that first bucket, and the majority of it is invested in fixed income and not stocks. So this is an exact example of why we separate this, so that in years like this, we're primarily selling assets that are safer and not linked to the stock market. And so generally we fill that bucket up enough to last for 7 or 8 years. And then we have the income later bucket that we have pegged, ready to go to refill that first bucket in about 7 to 8 years. So because we have a little bit of a window, like a 7, 8 year window before we're going to touch it, we can get a little bit more aggressive, not full aggressive, because we still are going to touch it in 7 or 8 years. And then what we do is we kind of plan to sweep that over, cut down the risk around the 7, 8 year mark, and then have that be your new income now bucket. So you may say, okay, well, if another 7, 8 years go, we get to 15 years, and now that bucket's gonna be depleted. Okay, where's the rest of my assets? Well, we have that third bucket, which is long-term growth, which is primarily invested in stocks. And we're not going to really touch that bucket for the most part for 15 years. And because we're not going to touch for 15 years, we can afford to be aggressive. We can afford to handle years like this year in year 1 or 2 or 3. We can be more aggressive and let that sit untouched for 15 years for the most part and grow for your long-term strategy. And then when you get towards the end of that, generally that 15-year mark, You then use that bucket to kind of refill bucket one, refill bucket two, start a new 15 years. We kind of work within 15-year windows with ATS. And Stan, I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I think that was well said. I mean, I would add that, just like Eric said, right now in this kind of, market where we're seeing fluctuation, traditionally a lot of people are feeling those ups and downs, but specifically, we have stable income. It's a different conversation with a client when they're using that strategy in retirement because it's their long-term goals, that long-term growth that Eric was talking about with stocks. We're not touching it. We have 15 years to worry about that. And it, like we said, mitigates risk and things of that nature. The other thing is Eric and I make sure that clients will not take too much out because studies show if you take too much out of a withdrawal rate from your savings, you will deplete that over time. And we make sure that we guide our clients so that they don't have that problem and they're positioned correctly.
And Stan, I see we had one of the attendees asked a question. How does annuities work with ATS? You want to talk about how that fills into that
Yeah.
first bucket?
Great question. So annuities, what we'll do, that's definitely one of the buckets that we might use for certain people. And especially if you don't have, let's say, a pension, a sizable pension, which most people don't anymore, we may use a contractual annuity that gives you guaranteed income for life and provides that. So it's almost that pension-like kind of investment that will give you part of your money will be in a bucket that will give you that fixed amount for the rest of your life, guaranteed contractually. You could even off some of these contracts even offer a dual or spousal so that your wife or husband, depending on who predeceases the other, can continue that income for the rest of their lives. And that's one of the ways we use that bucket.
Yeah, and it's a way that we can increase our floor of obviously you're gonna have Social Security, maybe you have a pension, maybe you have a small pension, it's not enough, but it's a way to kind of increase that floor of guaranteed contractual income. So then we can use the other assets in that manner.
We did just get another question in also about retirement and wondering what is a recommendation for the withdrawal rate per year over an average 40-year retirement, since we are seeing statistically we're looking at 30 plus years as is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, generally, obviously this has to be unique to your, situation, but
Right.
generally, once you get over like 4% is usually the golden rule. Once you get over 4%, you start to there could be some issues. There could be some cracks, especially looking over a 40-year period. So I would say generally 4% is a good rule of thumb. Of course, for your specific situation, I recommend, you put together a financial plan and also, obviously, if you're going to do it with us and an ATS strategy that can handle that longevity of 40 years. And we can figure out exactly what income level would be suitable in your situation. But I think a good rule of thumb is usually 4%.
Yep.
We got one more. What happens if someone retires and then 10 years later they pass away? What happens to that annuity that they had open at that point? You might have already kind of answered this one.
Depends on, I think, the contract too and the structure, but if they have named beneficiaries, it depends too if it's IRA money or not IRA money and things. So it's not an easy answer initially, but what happens is normally you have named beneficiaries, that would go to the named beneficiary. If you have guaranteed income, like we were talking about, if you do have a spousal rider, then the spouse will continue that, and that will continue on for their life. Yeah, hopefully that
Yeah,
answered the question. Maybe Eric can add some
I
other.
was just going to add on, unfortunately, annuities are very complex products, and every insurance company and every annuity within each insurance company is different and has different stipulations. So unfortunately, there's not like one good answer for that question. It really
Right.
all depends on the specific annuity you either have or you're considering getting. And unfortunately, there's not like one standard answer for that.
All accurate.
There is a follow-up to that. And then what is the general cost of that spousal rider that you mentioned, if there is one?
It kind of
Also
similar.
varies.
Unfortunately, like I said, every insurance company is different. Every contract within each insurance company is different. These spousal riders, I can't give an exact answer
Yeah.
because every single contract has a different cost. That's
I mean,
where, yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I'll comment on a general idea. We've seen it from 0.5% on up to over 1%.
Yeah.
That again, but to Eric's point, each contract is different and specific to the carrier, the insurance carrier. So it really does vary.
Yeah, so I mean, if it's something that you're considering, we of course, when we assess annuities, we research and look for one specific to our client situations, and and then what we always consider the expense when we're determining what we think is the most suitable. So, yeah, unfortunately, there's not one standard rule.
Right.
I'm seeing that we have been getting a lot of questions about annuities specifically.
Okay.
To our friend that is submitting all of these, I highly encourage you to schedule a meeting with your advisor and get those hands-on answers about your specific situation.
They're great questions.
They're fantastic questions, but we want to make sure that we cover everything, not just as a generic, but for you specifically. So just
Yeah,
call our office
just
and
give us a
we'll
call.
take care
Give
of
us a
it.
call. We'll answer them all. Yep.
So before we start to wrap, are there any other questions? Because I know we had a steady stream of them for a few minutes there.
This wonderful spring day has, I guess, encouraged our audience to answer many questions in preparing for springing into retirement.
Okay, one last annuity question, and then I promise we will wrap. Do you recommend annuities, and under what circumstances do you versus don't you?
We touched base on it a little bit. If we're using the ATS strategy, if you don't have any solid source like a pension, you don't have a pension and things of that nature, you really are concerned about having guaranteed type income, we would obviously use it for something like that as a portion of your income to come from that type of annuity structure. And there's other reasons too. Again, the planning is so different and unique for everybody. That's one reason. We also sometimes might shy away from annuities in different situations because they can have higher costs. But again, it depends on the goal of the client and
Yeah.
if they want secured income and things of that nature and guaranteed contractual income, that is the only way outside of some type of pension and things. So, and Eric, please add what you
Yeah, I
think
guess
as
one
well.
thing I'll just add in, I mean, to kind of piggyback on that, is just generally, I mean, obviously every advisory firm is different, but generally for our firm, we're mostly looking at annuities more for those that are in retirement or about to be very close into retirement and getting their guaranteed contractual income set up. For those pre-retirement, saving for retirement, we generally stay away from annuities just because of their higher costs, and we think there's other methods are advantageous for more growth oriented investments. But there is one instance where those that are trying to build wealth and work towards that retirement, where maybe let's say you're already maxing out your 401k, your income doesn't allow you to contribute to a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA or anything like that, but you still have money you're trying to put away specifically for retirement. That is where then sometimes we would use they call it investment only variable annuities, where it allows you to use taxable money and in the vehicle of variable annuities, which are tax deferred vehicles. And so it is an additional way sometimes for our high income clients that are already maxing out their 401k, that they maxed out all the different areas that you could possibly put away in a retirement account. Then maybe, yeah, you could consider a investment only variable annuity as a accumulation vehicle, but primarily for us, it's more just a retirement income vehicle.
Gotcha. And I'm not seeing any other questions coming in just this second, so I think we are going to start to wrap. Specifically, I wanted to say a huge thank you for all of you joining us for our Spring into Retirement webinar. We hope that this session gave you valuable insights so that you can be confident going into retirement. Of course, thank you to Stan and Eric for sharing their experience with everyone. If you have any additional questions or want to set up your personalized review, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. You just give us a call if you have any questions.
We're here to help. Have a great day.